Did you know the best seeds for your garden don't come from the nursery? In fact, the seeds that will create the most robust and delicious fruits and vegetables come directly from your garden. This is because they are uniquely adapted to your growing conditions, better than anything you can buy from a fancy catalog or website. Through the magic of seed saving, it is quite possible to have the garden of your dreams. The best part is, saving your own seeds is surprisingly easy and fun. With a bit of instruction, anyone can become a seed-saving superstar. Let us teach you how in our free seed-saving webinar. Just text SEEDS to 33444 to sign up, or visit seedsavinghacked.org for more information. That's SEEDS to 33444, or visit seedsavinghacked.org.
You're listening to the Urban Farm Podcast, your partner in the Grow Your Own Food revolution. Whether you've just been introduced to urban farming or you're a lifelong advocate, we're sure you'll leave feeling more informed, equipped, and empowered to dig deeper into the soil of your local food economy. With you every step of the way, here's your host, Greg Peterson.
Today on the Urban Farm Podcast, we have Matthew Hoffman of the Living Seed Company to talk about his experience with seeds and seed saving. Matthew and his wife Astrid co-founded the Living Seed Company, an organic heirloom seed company serving the greater Bay Area, dedicated to planting the seeds of world peace through supporting the act of families, friends, and communities growing food together. The Living Seed Company preserves the diversity in our food through the distribution and growing of open pollinated seeds and educating about life-affirming art of seed saving. Matthew and Astrid live and farm happily in Point Reyes Station, California. Welcome to the show today, Matthew.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be here.
Absolutely. So I shared a bit about you. Can you fill in the blanks for us and share more about the path you took to get where you're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. So we started the Living Seed Company about 5 years ago, and I had been for the previous 10 years actually a giant puppeteer, working a lot around environmental issues. I worked a lot with Dr. Jane Goodall.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, she influenced me in many different ways growing up, and in the time we worked together, I worked with her youth group, Roots and Shoots. And
nice.
We did a lot of different projects, and I lived in Tanzania for a while, and community gardens and school garden programs, and was really inspired about how food brought people together in these really beautiful ways. And kind of looking for a transition. My wife and I were dating at the time, but we were looking forward to the future. And although it was a great lifestyle, it maybe left a little bit financially to be desired. So was looking at the next evolution of my life, and was been an avid gardener my entire life, and grew up in very rural northern Wisconsin, where gardening was just a thing everybody did, and I grew up in my parents, my grandparents, my aunt and uncle's gardens all the time. So feeling that deep kinship in something that I was really passionate about, started looking at what avenue I could take that would keep me connected to gardening and farming, and seeds just kept coming up for me over and over, and just felt really constantly inspired to learn more about seeds. And up until that point, I hadn't really thought about it that much. I'd planted thousands, tens of thousands of seeds in my life, but had never really pondered where did they come from, how did I get them in this packet, and started doing more research around that. And pretty much had the idea, like, hey, I think I want to start a seed company, and was researching online and saw this man, Bill McDormand, speaking at the Ecology Center in Berkeley a couple days later. Like, that sounds great. That's a perfect...
Hold on. Did you say a couple days later?
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, that's the universe knocking, right?
Yeah, for sure. It was like I pretty much had this idea, and like the next day I found Bill online.
Wow.
So I had no real idea how to even go about that. And I just knew Bill was speaking about seeds. So I went to go see him, and immediately just loved his passion, his humor, his depth of knowledge, just his inspiration that he had. And I was like, wow, this guy I think he could be my teacher.
Yeah.
And even throughout my life, I've kind of always had a tough time with some teachers, a lot of teachers, but this guy was just like, I could work with him. And at the end of his talk, he was like, and I'm going to be hosting my first ever seed school coming up.
Nice.
It'll be a week-long intensive, in-depth into the world of seeds, and at the end of it, I'll teach you how to start your own seed company if that's what you want to do. And I was like, wow, that's alignment. So
were you like, how quickly can I get in?
Yeah, basically. I was like, yeah, I couldn't make it for the first one. I had some scheduling conflict, but the second one, yeah, basically I called Bill's wife, Belle, and I was like, I'll do whatever it takes to come to seed school. So within a few months, I was at seed school, and a few months later, we launched the Living Seed Company website.
Fantastic. Just as a side note, I did the seed school with Bill and Belle in Tucson, and it was like the fourth or the fifth time they did it. In 2011. And really back in 2011, it was like, all right, how can I get this stuff online? So through Urban Farm U, that's our educational arm of my company here, through Urban Farm U, we offer seed school online. So people can actually, people can actually get the seed school or pieces of the seed school that you took in the ground for a week online. So
excellent.
Yeah.
We love it. Yeah, we do a lot of education in the Bay Area around seed saving.
Fantastic.
It's kind of one of the main missions of our company.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So while we're at this moment, tell us how people can get a hold of you if they're in the Bay Area and they want to learn seeds.
Well, you can go to our website, livingseedcompany.com. Also, my email is matthew@livingseedcompany.com. And there's a newsletter sign up, so if people sign up for a newsletter, they'll be given the dates of when we'll be doing any education activities. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, cool. So let's just dive into seeds. And so my first, and I got questions here. I may have other ones for you. How do seeds from different sources differ? How do we even know where to start on that?
That's a very big question. So I kind of like to break it down like knowing like a lot of things with the farmers markets these days and farm to table is like knowing your farmer, knowing where your food is coming from. I feel that applies as well to seeds, knowing, who's farming your seeds or who's providing your seeds.
Right.
There's even organic seeds now that are coming from China, from India, and the quality is quite questionable. And, a lot of those seeds are going to, big box stores, and a lot of hardware stores are carrying these seeds that are, produced in mass quantities. We'd like to consider ourselves more of an artisanal company where we're working with small farmers that we know that Bill has introduced us to or we found along the way who are really taking the time to do smaller, very curated batches of seeds. So, like for instance, like a large producer of, say, an organic carrot seed, they're growing a huge field of carrots and they're, harvesting pretty much all the seed at the end. A smaller producer is going to walk his field. He's going to pick carrots. He's going to taste them.
Right.
And if it doesn't pass the taste test, it hits the soup pot or something like that. And if it meets the seed test, that root goes back in the ground, and that is allowed to go to seed.
Right.
So there's the constant selection as seed farmers and seed stewards that we have to do is like all these different levels of awareness. So there's taste, there's vigor, there's so many different aspects of like selection. So working with people who are really paying attention to the more nuanced aspects of seed production is what we're trying to do.
So it's really like you're not growing the plants for the vegetables. You're growing them for the seeds. It's a different game then, I guess, yes?
Mostly. Some we do a bit of both, like tomatoes and like peppers. So when I'm saving tomato seeds, there's still a lot of flesh that you get left over.
Oh, yes.
And so I'm always making pasta sauce or salsa or, canning, doing something to use up. And then also the same with the chili peppers. I'm always making hot sauces and stuff like that. And also, like with squash and some other things, we have relationships with chefs in the area who are supportive of us. We'll sell them the squash and give them a 5-gallon bucket and say, put the seeds in here.
Oh,
and
nice.
And then we'll come back and pick up the seeds. And, so it works great for us. We get paid for the actual vegetable, and then we also still get to collect the seeds.
Right.
So that's a nice little bonus, knowing some chefs.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Plus, they do all kinds of cool things with what you take them.
Yes. Yeah, it's always like a total treat to see what they turn into in the end. So.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? There's nothing better. I grow peaches here in Phoenix, and a few years ago I took a box of peaches into one of our local chefs, and then I went back that evening for dinner.
Yes.
There's nothing better than
I agree.
Delivering hot, fresh peaches. They're hot because they've been in the in the nice warm sun. And,
yep.
You go back 4 hours later and you're eating peach cobbler for dessert. That's just there's nothing better than that.
Yeah, love it.
So how does one grow and save seeds? What's the process like on that?
Yeah, so there's different techniques for different types. There's two main kind of categories. There's wet processing and then there's dry processing. In the wet processing, things like tomatoes, there's actually a fermentation process involved.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
There's a gelatinous sac that's around the tomato seed, and that needs to ideally be taken off. And also there are some health benefits for the seed, too, when the fermentation happens. You kind of think of like a probiotic. There is microflora on the seed coat that actually will help in the initial germination and the initial plant health. So that's something that's added to it, and also some disease resistance.
So with tomatoes, you're actually fermenting them.
Yep, and cucumbers as well. They have the same kind of similar gelatinous sac around it. So that process will remove it over time. It's about a 3 or 4 day process. Like with the tomatoes, there's a beneficial mold that forms on the top, and once that forms, the fermentation has gone through its full process, and then it's just a matter of stirring it up. The good seeds are going to sink, the bad seeds will float, and most of the flesh and everything is going to float, and then pour that off and do a few changes of water until the seeds are clean, and then you dry them for about a week until the seeds snap. That's like the real way to tell when the seeds are dry enough to go into storage, is if you take them between your fingernails and they snap instead of bend.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay, I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah, called the snap test.
Oh, yeah.
Easily enough.
Cool.
And then for other dry seeds, beans, peas, carrots, those you're going to wait until they're pretty much fully matured on the plant, dried down as far as possible. If it's in a time of year when you might be expecting some rain and the seeds are almost dry, we recommend pulling them in and putting them under a tarp or in a place where they can finish drying, because once they're almost dry and if they get wet, that can lead to damaging the seeds and different things like that. And say like a pea or a bean, to know, or corn, something large, it's called the hammer test, and if you hit it with a hammer and it shatters instead of smushes, then you know it's dry. Storage, yeah. And the easier things to save would be things that are perfect flowers or have a perfect flower. So those are going to have the male and female reproductive parts in the same flower, and they self-pollinate. So there's less chance of cross-pollination.
Oh, right. Like what?
So beans, peas, tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, those are going to be ones that are going to be less likely. Bees still will transfer some pollen, and it also depends on your local pollinators. So that's another aspect of seed saving, is knowing who is out there pollinating and what they're going after.
Right.
Some bean flowers are more appealing to bees than others, so you kind of, if you're throwing beans to each other, you might want to be aware of that. As a backyard gardener and backyard seed saver, you don't have to be as concerned. As a seed company, we really have to make sure that we're not getting cross-pollination, because we want to ensure our customers are getting what they expect. In the backyard, if you get some cross-pollination, you can always eat your mistakes. Something the next year doesn't look like you thought it was, you might have discovered something new and beautiful. And that's how all of our amazing varieties came about, was through a lot of accidents. I mean, there is also detailed conscious breeding where people are trying to create something specifically, but a lot of what we have is happy accidents.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. So what are easy vegetables to save seeds from? Like if you were going to pick one or two.
One or two. I like recommending like peas or beans.
Oh, right.
Yep, they're just, the one thing you got to be aware of is it's going to take longer. You're going to have that plant in your garden plot longer than you normally would because you're letting it dry all the way down. So you could either, like with beans, you could save the seeds of a bean that's typically used as a snap bean, or you could also do beans that are typically used dry. And there are some varieties that have both really good green beans and good dry beans as well. So I like to do those myself. Another easy one is tomatoes. I described the fermentation process. It's not that complicated. It's a pretty straightforward deal. And also the flowers tend not to be very attractive to most pollinators, so the chances of crossing with another tomato are less likely.
Right.
So. And also lettuce can be kind of fun too. It's like your dainty little lettuce plant turns into this tall, like flowering stuff.
Yeah, we've got a lot of those in the urban farm right now. That it's that time of year. So.
Yeah, and it's easy. Oh, and cilantro, obviously, any gardener's going to know that one. It wants to go to seed as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
It's once you buy a packet of cilantro, you should have cilantro seeds for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. So, how do organic seeds differ from non-organic seeds? And I'm assuming that we're talking about certified organic seeds grown organically. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, we have some varieties that aren't certified organic that we grew organically on a non-certified plot, and there's also some rare stuff out there that, if we know who we're getting it from and we trust that they're, growing it organically, they're just not certified because it is a process and it is money, and not everybody's doing it to that level. The main thing, though, in seeds that are grown either certified organic or organically is that they have been developed specifically to thrive in an organic environment without pesticides, without herbicides. They're developed to stand on their own, where a lot of commercially produced seeds that are being used in standard kind of chemical agriculture, they don't have to meet the same rigors because they're being supported by lack of competition, whether it be other plants or insects. So I think that's one of the big things that maybe a lot of people don't understand is, like, if you're going to be an organic gardener, you do want to make sure you're getting seeds that were grown for that specific endeavor, because it definitely takes a little bit more for those organic varieties to thrive and to have defense against, say, aphids or whatever you have in your garden. And a lot of the seed breeders, they'll select in organic gardening, this is kale, aphids. Like, let's select kale that is really resistant to aphid damage.
Interesting.
Or like a blight or a disease. Whatever seems to be a constant kind of problem with that variety. How do we select as seed breeders to optimize its potential for, a long, happy life?
Well, now, and I'd always heard, because there's not a lot of varieties of certified organic seeds out there, is there?
Not a lot. There's more all the time, and there's some great seed producers and breeders who are now really looking at what is the next wave of either improving old heirloom varieties or creating varieties, the genetics of the heirlooms, and specifically breeding them for that. And a lot of the old heirlooms originally were grown organically. It was, a lot of the heirlooms come before the time of the Green Revolution, where chemicals were more prevalent in not only just large agriculture, but now backyard gardening, people are spraying and all this stuff. So and that's one thing we're trying to improve on and increase are the varieties that are available organic.
Now, when we say organic, you mean certified organic, right?
I do. Yes.
Yeah. So in theory, you could actually get some non-organic seeds, grow them out a couple of seasons, and then for your own use, you know that they're organic seeds.
Yes. Yep.
And is that something
Exactly.
that's something that you suggest for people to do?
Yeah, if it's something they can't find and they want to have their, own organic seed, definitely. And we do that too. We find stuff that we really like that, we want to grow it out organically. So I think it is a big, benefit to the world when you start to do that. It's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah. All right, so I'm going to ask you kind of one of those questions that has maybe a little bit of energy behind it for some people, and it includes GMO seeds. So Matthew, can you kind of distinguish the difference between open pollinated and heirloom seeds, hybrid and GMO seeds?
Yes, definitely. So open pollinated seeds, which includes heirlooms, all heirlooms are open pollinated, is that if you control pollination properly and harvest the seeds, you will have offspring that are like the parents. So heirlooms is a specific kind of general term for older varieties that have been handed down in a family or in a community or a region. And all those are going to be open pollinated, which means you can save the seed and plant it the next year, and you're going to get what you expect. In hybrids, they're two very distinct parental lines, normally very inbred, and like say a tomato, and in and of themselves they might not be that great, but when you take these two lines and you cross them back together, you'll have something of value, whether it's disease resistance or a super early tomato or
a seedless watermelon.
Or a seedless watermelon, exactly, and tasteless watermelon. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, and if you take the seeds from, say, the tomato, and plant, say you have 1,000 seeds, and you plant out 1,000 plants, you're going to get 800, 900 different things going on. Some of the seeds might not grow. Got it. Others are going to be all over the place. Some of them will look like the parents. Some of them will have, different characteristics. So there are people who go out and called stabilizing hybrids, where they'll, over maybe 8 years, select and try to stabilize it so it becomes open pollinated and you can save the seed from it. Right. But typically, hybrids are being produced by larger companies that have, a lot of research money, and they're, trying to make a profit off of it. Right. Not to say that it's bad necessarily, but I like the fact that people can have the power of the seeds in their own hands and save the seeds if they'd like to. I mean, some hybrids do have a place if you do have a disease in your area and you really want to grow something that you can't grow because of a disease, and there's a hybrid out there that is resistant. That's a great place for a hybrid, for sure.
Oh, perfect.
And then there's GMOs, which is a completely different animal, and that is injecting the cells of another plant or species, even viruses, bacteria, animals, into the plant cell wall itself. It's a very kind of disruptive technology. The effects of it, long-term health when people eating this, hasn't really been studied at all. So
they've been out about 25 years or so at this point.
Yeah. And it's just there's no real long-term data, and it is something that humans have never really dealt with. So it's kind of a curious thing that it's being promoted as this kind of save the world, feed the world idea when it's in the hands of very powerful, rich companies who are just trying to make, obviously, profits. Right. The one thing is, people as home gardeners aren't going to have to worry about getting GMO seeds. They're not for sale in a garden store. Right. It's basically you have to sign a contract to get them. But there is now, the potential of genetic drift, where pollen from, say, a GMO cornfield could be drifting into another farmer who's growing organic corn seed. Right. And, that's a big thing we face. Now, we're fortunate. We're in a GMO-free county.
Whoa. What?
Area, and so.
Really?
Yes. Marin County, I believe, was the second county in the country that went GMO-free. So we're fortunate to have
nice
access to very clean environment when it comes to seed production, especially for those things that are wind pollinated like corn and beans. And those are the two big ones as far as like vegetables go that have the potential for genetic drift because the pollen is very fine and it can float in the wind for miles.
Exactly. Interesting. So, upshot of all this?
I think the new interest and understanding that people are starting to develop around seeds and open pollinated seeds specifically and seed saving, I think there is kind of a universal appeal to food being understood. And I think it's a common unification point for families, for communities, for cultures, and even nations. And I believe it's in just so many levels of like sharing good food. People inherently have this understanding, and they don't really want it messed with.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. And you know, even some of my more conservative side of the family in rural Wisconsin, they get what good food is, and they don't want, you know, these huge companies like messing up people's. It's just a very obvious, like, unifying kind of idea.
Right.
So, we feel really privileged and blessed to have a company that's providing some of the best seeds in the world, you know, to encourage that continuing endeavor of humans sharing food together and sharing seeds together. And, you know, you look at human culture as we know it now, it goes back to seed saving about 10, 12, 14,000 years ago when humans started to consciously select seeds. And in that process ended up moving from hunter-gatherer to settling down, farming, having villages, having more time for music and art and writing and all of these things that we consider very human. A lot of it came after people started saving seeds.
Yeah. So, Matthew, you and Astrid started a seed company out of your seed school class that you took. Tell us about it.
So, our first year, we offered a collection of seeds. We were trying to keep it low-hanging fruit, something that we could feel like we could accomplish. So we created a collection of seeds that were wildly adapted, things that we really liked, had grown before, things that would do good in a lot of different climates. And that was called our Founders Collection. It was the first thing we had.
Oh, nice.
And then the second year, we added some new collections. We added a northern collection for the north and a southern collection for more of a long, hotter climates, like you guys. And then we also created an urban collection, varieties that were specifically chosen to do well in urban situations.
Wow.
You know, where you're going to have, you know, maybe more shade, less access to maybe directly in the ground, things that are going to do well in containers and pots, things that trellis so you can, like, you know, maximize space. So, and with the addition of those collections, we really saw a pretty dramatic increase in sales and people, you know, finding out about us and really liking what we were doing. We also included seed-saving booklets to teach people how to, you know, save the seeds from their gardens.
Really important.
Actually written by Bill. Yeah. And then the following year we started to do individual packets, and now we have both our collections. We also added a pizza and a salsa collection, a culinary herb collection.
Nice.
Just kind of a one-stop shop, especially to help people who might be gardening for the first time or people who just want to have an easy, you know, gift to give to a gardening friend or family member. And then we have all of our individual packets online. And every year we're adding new varieties. We don't offer, you know, a lot of seed companies are like, we have 600 varieties or whatever. We're maybe 150, 200 varieties. We're really slowly selecting the things that we're offering to make sure we're offering the best seed we can and the best varieties we can for our customers.
Now, are you growing out these seeds?
We grow some of them, and then we coordinate with other farmers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's running a company and farming are both a little more than full-time jobs, so we're always a little stretched. So trying to find that balance. I prefer to be in the field growing seeds, but I often spend a lot of time in front of my computer or packing seeds and shipping and all of that.
All the stuff,
So we do grow some ourselves, and then we have a great group of farmers that we work with.
Nice. Nice. So where can our listeners get your seeds?
Yes, so we are livingseedcompany.com. And yeah, we have a real nice new online catalog that we just set up this winter, and we're also in a few stores around the San Francisco Bay Area as well.
Nice. Cool, fantastic. So I'm going to shift on you a little bit, and I would like to know a time that you failed, how you overcame that failure, and what you might have learned from it.
Yes, let's see. My first year seed farming, I was actually growing two of Bill's favorite tomatoes, a Galena tomato and a Sasha's Altai, both are from Siberia.
Yep.
When he went behind the Iron Curtain in the late 80s and smuggled tomato seeds out.
Right.
And I was growing these varieties. I was very excited about them. And I was in my seed garden and just watching, like I was speaking about earlier, watching the pollinators. And I thought I had enough space between the two types of tomatoes, and this big bumblebee comes flying in. And sure enough, goes over to the Galena flowers, and it's like buzzing all in, and then flies all the way over to the Sashas and starts going after the nectar and pollen of the tomato flowers.
Mm-hmm.
And basically just ruined my entire seed production for that year. Just not knowing, if there was a cross going to happen.
Right.
And just one of those things, it was my first year and didn't really know the pollinators in that spot. Now I know there's bumblebees that like
tomatoes,
flowers there. And it also depends, for here, it's a very specific thing. We don't have rain in the summer, and there's what's called a dearth, where there's not a lot of pollen and nectar for the bees, both honeybees and wild bees.
Mm-hmm.
And so they start to be a little more indiscriminate. Tomato flower is not the most appealing, but if there's not a lot around,
they're going to come for those.
Go for it.
Yeah.
So also being aware of like how the time of year and weather affects what the pollinators are going to go for.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was kind of a big bummer for me, but I also learned a lot, and it definitely enriched my understanding and need to be more attentive to some things.
Yeah. Now, have you tried, because tomatoes can be caged, right? You could actually put a cage around them because tomatoes are self-fertile, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. And then a lot of people also do, they make these little blossom bags. You can just, if you just want to save, a few fruits, you don't necessarily need to save all of them. You can use these little bags and you put them on the blossoms before they open, and then that ensures like nothing's gonna.
Perfect.
Yeah, especially if you're in, like, say, in a smaller backyard, and you don't have a lot of space for your tomatoes. They're growing up, right next to each other. You can then just put bags on the blossoms. And then after they bloom, then you take it off, and then the tomato will grow, and you don't have to worry about any cross pollination.
Perfect.
You can use those for beans or peas.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow, cool. So what do you consider your biggest success?
I think when I start to brag a bit, I talk about the watermelons that I grow.
Oh, tell me. I love watermelons.
And one of the things, talking to the customer base in the San Francisco Bay Area, we're coastal Pacific. It's cool summers, and it's a difficult climate for watermelons. And gardener after gardener after gardener is like, no, I've never had success with watermelons, never success with watermelons, over and over and over. And I was like, I am going to find some watermelons that will do good in a cool summer climate.
Right.
And so over the past 6 years, I've been growing out watermelons, and I've got 4 varieties that I really like for the cool weather, and I've had people have success. And so, and they're absolutely delicious too. So yeah, I would say that the watermelons that we carry are some of my biggest success stories.
Bonus. So what drives you? What's your big why?
I believe that the connection that people can have with food and each other is such a fundamental part of peaceful possibility of a world. Jane Goodall, she has a book that came out a few years ago called Harvest for Hope. And in there she hypothesizes that like one of the greatest things that will lead towards peace in the world is people in small community food production. And it's good for the physical body, it's good for the psychology of a person, it's good for social and community connection. And it's also less taxing on resources, whether it's fossil fuel or water or just the energy it takes to transport things.
Right.
And that this process of people growing food together is so beneficial on so many levels that it kind of just has this really unquestionable inherent goodness to it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what gets me excited, is just bringing people together around good food and just letting the miracle happen.
Nice.
So.
Yeah. I'm all about education, and I have to know, is there one book that has been influential for you in your seed-saving life?
I really love Carol Depp's The Resilient Gardener.
Oh, yes.
She focuses on kind of 5 main foods that are most beneficial for humans as far as like really producing calories and nutrition. But all of her books are great. She also has how to breed your own vegetable varieties. And she's just a really great author when it comes to seeds, and I found some of her writings to be very accessible to people. So.
Fantastic. So what one final piece of advice do you have for our listeners?
If you're going to save seeds, take notes. And and have fun, and don't overthink it. Just enjoy the process. Don't be too stressed out about it. Just jump in, start. It's contagious. You'll learn more as you go, and like I said before, you can always eat your mistakes.
Yeah, isn't that wonderful? Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show and sharing your experience with us today, Matthew. It's been a treat chatting with you.
Likewise, Greg. It's been really cool.
Absolutely, and I want to. Actually, I've got one more question for you here, besides how can our listeners get a hold of you? And it's kind of in that same realm. Tell us a little bit about your website, and what is your website, and what do you offer there?
So our website is livingseedcompany.com, and you can buy our collections, you can buy our individual packets. We also have a newsletter sign up, and that's kind of where we distribute, information about upcoming events that we might be having, new varieties that we're offering, exciting groups that we work with who we donate seeds to. And it's a really nicely laid out, easy to navigate, and we've heard it's a feel-good site, so nice. We're really proud of it, and yeah.
Perfect. So for all my listeners out there, here's my request. Go to livingseedcompany.com and support Matthew and Astrid. They are doing incredible work out there. Buy some seeds and interact with them, because in my opinion, growing seeds and saving them and building a stronger seed variety set out there is one of the most important things we can be doing out there.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg.
Absolutely. So do you have an email address, Matthew?
Yes, Matthew@livingseedcompany.com.
Great. Thank you so much. And that's it for today. Thanks for joining us on the Urban Farm Podcast.
All right. Thank you.
Did you know the best seeds for your garden don't come from the nursery? In fact, the seeds that will create the most robust and delicious fruits and vegetables come directly from your garden. This is because they are uniquely adapted to your growing conditions, better than anything you can buy from a fancy catalog or website. Through the magic of seed saving, it is quite possible to have the garden of your dreams. The best part is, saving your own seeds is surprisingly easy and fun. With a bit of instruction, anyone can become a seed-saving superstar. Let us teach you how in our free seed-saving webinar. Just text SEEDS to 33444 to sign up, or visit seedsavinghacked.org for more information. That's SEEDS to 33444, or visit seedsavinghacked.org.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Urban Farm Podcast. Remember to listen 3 days a week for tips, advice, and resources to help you on your journey with urban farming. You can find us on the web at urbanfarm.org, or send us an email to podcast@urbanfarm.org. In the words of Vincent van Gogh, great things are done by a series of small things brought together. Be encouraged that with each lesson learned and skill developed, you are one step closer in the direction of your dreams.